This one is between Sinoccence and Diskraip. Diskraip up here on the north spawn in lovely lavender, as is his custom. Meanwhile, down on the south pole of Gargantuan, sorry, just filling with OBS, we have Sinoccence in orange. Both players bots first. Is that into a second bots or into an air? I was too busy fiddling with OBS to really pay attention. This is Gargantuan Ladder Edition. A very large planet, 610 radius. A nice pond in between the commanders for a bit of naval action. Not a huge amount of metal to claim, so it's not all for the pond. And likewise, it doesn't have a super command over a lot of the metal. Speaking of, there's lots of it. All over the backside of this planet here. So there is plenty to go and grab. We'll see some large armies playing, with any luck. Multiple different types of T2, possibly some Titans. It is a long game, so who knows what's going to happen. We're in for a 40-minute game, folks. So saddle up, get yourself a brew, maybe a scone or two, and let's watch these two play for you. A couple of fabs expanding in one direction, a couple of fabs expanding in another here from Sinoccence on the southernmost. Grabbed all 4 mechs in his spawn, of course. Going just for Galata to defend against any bumblebees. Kewi 397. What is a scone? There's no such thing as a scone, it's a scone. No, it is not a biscuit. So, generally how I've seen people play Gargantuan, although I haven't seen it recently, is that you'll then start to see people move into the water here and gradually creep up. But I don't know how that's adapted with the new T2 boosting factory meta, because there's a lot more to play for on land, potentially, than there is in water. So I might have imagined bot T2. It's like we had a miscue here from Diskraip. Bots into triple air. And a bot proxy up there. The radar will be able to spy on all of this, which will do quite nicely. Turret there, defending that fab, really nice. And what we also see are a few air fabs going and trying to get a little bit of a cheeky thing here and there. Very nice use of air fabs, especially on a planet this large. If an air fab goes undetected, it can really change the tide of an early game and allow a base to just really factory up hard without having to worry too much about immediate expansion. So we'll have to keep an eye on those. Is Sinoccence doing the same? It doesn't look like it, going for a much more vanilla build here. Going up to only 90 mechs so far. Expanding gradually, we're moving up to the mountain 3. Disk doing the same. Sino now coming back down. Fabus stays alive for now. The Interceptor sees it. Doc's probably going to start moving, will they? No, Fabus survives. Does it? Maybe not. Will it? Who knows? Also, if you haven't been watching a lot of my videos recently, there have been a few recent balance changes, and one of the main ones is that docs can't shoot air anymore. That's a biggie. You can't sort of hope that your docs kill off some bumblebees or some air fabs or something like that. You've got to actually deal with them with air or some spinners. So another air fab from Diskraip. Second one on the board, as it were. Sinoccence, meanwhile, just taking his time, expanding in multiple different directions. Slow and steady. That's great. They're trying to lock down the choky areas, and he's doing so quite nicely, getting up a factory here in this little enclave, locking this one down with a turret. He hasn't quite got a Galata to it yet. Meanwhile, he's going for this middle island with an airfab. You get a radar up. That'll do quite nicely, actually. That'll allow him to see any activity in this general region. So both players really expanding quite hard before even really meeting each other on the field of battle, so to speak. And that is a very peculiar location for a power generator line. It's not going to happen. I don't know what Diskraip was thinking building P-gens there. Has he run out of fabbers in his... Why? It almost reminds me of back in the days when you'd set your bot fabbers building your factories and your commander would sit at the back of Forge and just build P-gen, P-gen, P-gen until the cows come home. It seems like that's almost a thing that's returned, certainly on this map, in this particular instance in Diskraip's play. Trying to defend nicely there, getting his T2 bots on the go. Sinoccence just about doing the same thing here. Factories, Sinoccence does have the advantage. How many air are we playing here? 3 against just 2. Or is that 3? That's 3. The 3 against 3, it's going to be a case of who does the better trades. Moving over some spinners here. Not too many. So that will go to Diskraip as an advantage, but still the numbers are not big enough yet to really make any inferences to any winners of the air game, so to speak. It'll just be a case of who gets the opportunity to do stuff like this. It doesn't happen! Oh, that would have been nasty if it did. Nasty, nasty, nasty. Well, looks like Sinoccence has had some successful proxy raids on the other side there. A couple of dead Faber remains. Diskraip here being put through his paces to send that Bumblebee to all corners of his frontier. You are sending docks in their 1s and 2s. Isn't really going to get him a huge amount on the main front. It's like Sinoccence here, trying to play for these platforms. Will he get a factory up here? I don't know. It's under a lot of pressure from both of these proxies that Diskraip has managed to get up with his airfabs. Again, look at that. The airfabs are really paying for themselves. They haven't been doing a lot of metal expansion, but they've got these proxies up, and proxies in the current meta are a pretty big thing. And have been for a while, really. There we go. T2 is up, and we're starting to see our slammers come out. Still neither player making any headway in the water there. More expansion from that airfab from Diskraip. Did get taken out though, but again, look at the ecos. 250 plays 216. I'd say they're paying for themselves. I don't know about anyone else. Sinoccence is not keeping on top of them as well as he should. Trying to do a bit of Faber raiding here and there. Nice dodging there by Diskraip. Very close. He needs to keep running though, because there's some... He's not out of the woods yet, even though we are on an Arctic planet here. Slammers coming up. Watch your back. Lots of armies here from Sinoccence. He's got quite a large army count advantage on Diskraip at the moment. Diskraip notably gone for a lot more vehicles than Sinoccence has. Gives Sinoccence a greater mobility for this part of the game. Although he has just lost a significant amount of T2 to bomber raids and will continue to do so for not putting in any slammers there, and that is going to be a bit of an oversight, losing a bit of metal unnecessarily in terms of army value. Not ideal. Has lost a few expansions though, and that does tip Sinoccence back over into the lead in terms of the economy, but it's still very, very close. Too close to call, really, considering neither has really got past the equator or any closer to threatening the other player's base. Again, still no player making any plays for the water. It's up to 15 factories. A little behind on fab accounts though. Trying to make a play for the middle. Diskraip still with the turrets. Zoning out. Losing a few proxies in the middle though gives Sinoccence a little bit of a breather. Again, the T2 was up before those proxies really got rolling, so to speak, so they didn't really pay for themselves, I'd say. Aha! It's like a cheeky naval just got taken out there by Diskraip. That's very fortunate of him. Very fortunate that he got those slammers across there. Interesting trying to build the naval over here rather than in the spawn. Very interesting. Aha! Disk now in the water. What will he do with that? Will he go straight into T2? I wonder. It's possible. Still, again, boosting out the factory. Note only the single T2 fab. Going for T2 power. Especially on a map with this much metal, I wouldn't necessarily worry about getting T2 mechs. It's just a case of expand and re-expand whenever you lose expansions like this. Diskraip, though, starting to flounder a bit on the re-expansion side. Sinoccence really putting him through his paces with threatening him on multiple fronts simultaneously. Really good job of doing that. It's just a case of Diskraip needing to find the right time to stop turtling up on these chokes and actually get some metal income. Because so far he's stalling, and that will translate into falling a little bit behind in the next part of the game. Especially as his army count suffers. And considering he's using quite so many fabbers. Needs to be going really for an airplay, but Sinoccence just about managing to stay ahead. That being said, I do feel like Diskraip is going to have the advantage in the air very soon, especially with T2 air coming up. Sinoccence has just been avoiding the engagement so far, which is working out for him really quite nicely. It allows him to pick off any forces of Diskraip's without having to sacrifice anything. Except that. And there we go. You know what I was saying earlier about not quite having enough to determine an air winner? I think we just did. That being said, the Bumblebees survive, and they will defend the base in the nick of time there. We do have a T2 mechs queued in the base. Interesting. And Orcas. Orcas, Orcas, Orcas. Not a lot of Galata. It's going to be necessary to defend against Sinoccence's bombers. And still, we're running out of spinners in the composition. We had a few more earlier when there were lots more vehicle factories. It's a marvel, a map with this much metal. 107 metal, no less. Speaking of which, why is there an odd amount of metal? That shouldn't be the case. Maybe it's because that hasn't rendered properly. It's very odd. Yeah, I think it's because that one hasn't rendered properly. No one else has picked up on the odd number previously. What was I saying? Can't remember. Oh yes, a map with so much metal. I'm surprised that we're seeing stalling issues from these players. Then again, I suppose that's testament to their raiding against each other, really. Here we go, look, counter raiding again from Diskraip with these tanks down the middle. Others here, little dormant. We've got T2 vehicles out from Diskraip now. Sinoccence, rather. T2 Air Factory was cancelled. Interesting. I wonder whether that was a miss micro, but oh, that doesn't look nice. And the T2 Fab just survives. It just survives. That was very, very close. Interesting how Sinoccence has gone for the vehicles rather than the airplay. Meanwhile, Diskraip could see an opportunity in the water here. About to lose a few more fabs that haven't protected these metal sites very well. Again, just look at this. Sinoccence raiding on so many fronts simultaneously. The amount of attention required to control all of this is not of your average player. I did mean that in a complimentary way. It sounded a bit odd. It sounded better in my head. Thank you for the follow, whoever that was. I can't quite read that, it's too small for me. Madara13, thank you. Thank you very much. This force, slow moving, but could gain a nice bit of ground here. We'll take out these 4 mechs, should be able to with these levelers in the mix. If we follow that with a couple of fabs, Sinoccence could, in theory, get a nice little proxy enclave here. Who knows? Ah. There ain't no anti-air in there, mate. Have you not learnt your lesson yet? Spinner, spinner, spinners. And that is a lot of... Wow, that's a lot of fabricators. But look how fast that vehicle factory is going up as a result. All of these guys building it and a T2 fab. There you go. So we got 2 T2 fabs now for Diskraip. And adapting into the T2 vehicles game. So will we see levelers and Shellamix or just pure levelers? I wonder. Meanwhile, more levelers coming out the other side. Diskraip still not necessarily pushing in with the naval. We have got a couple of torpedo launchers blocking that from the immediate. Unless we make a T2 naval play. Sinoccence with the float, the big float. Look at that. Almost 100 metals worth of float. Surprised we're not seeing more T2 factories, but then again, with the boosting meta, do you need them? I'd argue yes, if you can afford it. And the map gives you metal. Make massive armies. When map gives you metal, get mad. Again, only a couple of spinners, but they are doing the work. Look at that. We've run out of bumblebees in that army. That air force. And again, just small raiding forces here. You don't need to always have your forces in big blobs. You don't always need it. And this is something that you see a lot in lower level games, is people just hoard their units until they feel they have critical mass and then just push out with everything. You don't need to. Part of winning a game is keeping your opponent from building enough. So once you can start sending out raiding forces that are going to do enough damage with just this and also distract your opponent and keep them on their toes, that's more than enough. Meanwhile, you can try and make a play with a moderately sized army rather than doing an all or nothing on one side. So here, if that was just a little larger, he would have got to that entire power line. Because the rest of the army is diverted over here to deal with these raiding forces. Just a little larger and he would have got there. Meanwhile, though, Diskraip on the south. Ooh, he's lost a lot of his naval. Looks like he tried to go in against the torpedo launchers. That's taken them down, so we can now use that blockade in future. Here we go. Keeping a nice defensive force, but also has globs here and there. Here we go. If you know that you can't win against a blob, just keep moving. You don't have to engage if you don't want to. And here, using this nice iceberg as a bit of a vision blocker. Allowing him to path around it. Deal damage in other locations. Just about. Oh! Unlucky. Oh no, look. There's the odd bit of metal. Is it? Oh no. No, ignore me. I'm speaking rubbish. I thought I'd found it, but no, I hadn't. That's not the middle of the map. Not even re-expanding while there is a fight going on overhead. Still, the bumblebees come in. Still, can they get that fabber? Probably will. They will. But Sinoccence now moving out with a large force. Can he get further into the base now? Looking at the army tabs, they're currently neck and neck. That being said, look at the air count for Diskraip. 24 of that is interceptors. Right? Make that 30. Meanwhile, of Sinoccence, his air contribution to his numbers are only 12. So he has a substantially larger ground army than Diskraip at the moment. Substantially. And we're seeing a lot of that here in this very imposing blob. We've got slammers, we've got levelers, we've got docks, and only a couple of spinners. Still not enough spinners for this many bumblebees. This many, maybe. But for the number that he knows, that Sinoccence knows Diskraip is producing, possibly not enough. I'm surprised we're not getting 4, maybe 5 spinners in with that amount of T2 there. We don't want to lose that again. This could be a painful push. Look at where Diskraip's commander is as well. It's nowhere near the centre of his base. He's moved out way towards the centre of the planet. And he's also built his vehicle factory really far forward as well to reduce the movement distance because of how slow they are. And there you go, you see, that's why you need more spinners if poss. Because if there are more, chances are they'll pick up the bumblebees before they've dropped their payload. Whereas in that instance, there was no hope for those spinners. And that entire force will get completely gobbled up by the defenders, plus the pelters. Nasty. And that is a really nicely set up choke there for Diskraip. He's got a couple of structures there, blocking a few bullets. Meanwhile, the pelters pick away from afar. Going up for another T2 vehicle factory now as well. That'll be his third. What's Sinoccence up to in terms of his T2? Another large blob there. About to have an engagement here. Ah, he's learned. We've got some storms coming out. Sinoccence, though, up to also his third T2. And continuing to produce his air factories now, up to a count of 9. Of a total of 20 factories here. How many have we got for Diskraip? 9 air as well. This is a huge amount of factories. I'm pleased with the way this is turning out, actually. This is exactly how I envisaged games on this map when I designed it. Exactly how I envisaged them. Sprawling bases, large armies. Constant raiding, it's great. Still not a lot in the naval game. Looks like Sinoccence has just got in there, though. A few submarines coming out. The Barracudas doing what they can. Yeah, you'll be hard-pressed to really get that up in time. Although, you never know. Can but try. He's got the metal to do it. Can he build the wall in time, though? That's the question. I might even build the wall before the second. It's going to be close. It's going to be very, very close. And there we go. Down it goes. Poor timing there from Diskraip. And there's the air trade again. Sinoccence still desperately trying to put the damage in there. With his air, still trying to win over in the air game. Sinoccence still not making any headway into this rather well defended region now with turrets galore. T2 air for Diskraip now. What is this? This is disgusting. We've got a storm in there as well. Storms deserve a better death than this. What on earth? I mean, the turret's gone, but what on earth? That's disgusting. Wow. I mean, it works, why not? Doesn't make it any less easier to look at. Still, the air game from Diskraip, and we've got the T2 air now, with some Kestrels. That will really bolster the raiding potential of this air, and will force Sinoccence to react in kind, either with lots of Galata, or with a T2 air of his own, because he doesn't have enough air factories now to be able to deal with the Phoenix when they really start rolling out. Here we go. A few more Kestrels and these metal sites will start to really evaporate. T2 Fab goes down! Moving over Galata though, not ideal. Still don't want to move over the rest of the base. There's going to be lots of Galata in there. Increasing a number of spinners. This is good. Could have had that earlier though. Better late than never. Still more Galata. Sinoccence really wise here, getting up Galata in as many places as he can. Really restrict Diskraip's mobility with his air. And anti-nukes, anticipating. Lots of T2 mechs in the base from Sinoccence, and it's still yet a large eco disparity. Almost 150 eco change. Diskraip in the lead there. This has T2 metal in so many places. In all of the places that he's been able to shore up with this base. A bit of a mutual destruction there. Not a huge amount left from either side. Diskraip does win over. There is another force for him to get through, so there's no reason to continue pushing in with such small numbers. Barracudas are going to be playing against Orcas in the ponds. Still no real play for the naval. Umbrellas even. Anticipating orbital play? I mean, I guess that also anticipates unit cannons. Just in case people go for the cheesy snipes. It's possible. We are quite late into the game now. If we bring up the chrono cam, we can see the timer on the thing there. We're half an hour in. Bit of a marathon, this one. Sinoccence again trying to push out, seeing what damage he can do. But at this point, so much of the eco is in the mainstay of Disk's base that you really got to penetrate your way in to be able to do a lot of eco damage, and Sinoccence just isn't quite managing to do that. He needs to start putting shellers in, I reckon. Or even blue hawks. Because he hasn't quite got the numbers to win out. He hasn't got the air advantage to win out, so the least he can do is try and do the ground kiting. And shellers and blue hawks would afford him that ability. You go see, still not managing rather, to make any damage against Disk's base. And the T2 Naval, here's the play from Disk to try and win this game. Come in from behind. Will it be the Leviathans, the Typhoons, or the Kaijus? Reckon Leviathan first, possibly Typhoon. If you've got the metal for it, Typhoons are good. Especially if you have air dominance. They can just sit over here and just peck away. He's going to have to use it though. There's a bubble of barracudas wandering his way. Yep, that is a technical term. A bubble of barracudas. A raiding force of subs is a bubble. That's going to be very disappointing if that T2 factory goes down. That's going to be very disappointing indeed. Is anything happening elsewhere which would be the reason why the air can't support that? Not a huge amount. There is this force on that side. Seriously going to lose this T2 naval factory having it just been built. Diskraip, pay attention, man! Again, he has just done a pass of this force. There are a lot of spinners in there though. As he learnt his lesson that he needs a greater ratio of air to ground to be able to deal with this now. And down goes the T2 Naval. I don't believe it. What? Well, that was that. It's a lot of metal used, and a power line is encroached upon. That bubble really dealing the damage. Air trade on the other side though, we're starting to see horseflies coming out from Diskraip now as well. They will really deal the damage to this T1 mechs as they wander around. Sinoccence really outclassed in the air game here. He needs to change up his builds. He has nowhere near the ability to deal with all of this. Unless he can goad them over Galata and Storms, he has no way of getting air advantage back. T2 Fab going to get picked off there again. What have we got in here? We've got a lot of spinners. No storms, though. Ideally would have at least one. Starting to really see Sinoccence struggle here as Diskraip continues to push ahead in the eco. The disparity of before is only growing. 230, 50 as a metal difference now. It's just a case of how does Diskraip choose to finish this? Or will it be Sinoccence who realises that he's quite so far behind? Could this be his all or nothing? We'll have to see. He managed to buy himself some time by getting rid of that T2 naval, but how much time? Because he's not really making any other plays. Not that he's committing to. I mean, this is a very non-committal play here. This is like, yeah, just go over there. Knowing that you don't have air control and not having a blob supported by anti-air defense is ludicrous. It's madness. It's the play of a resigned man to his fate. in the depths of the icy waters of Gargantua. Here we go. What can the horseflies do here? Still have a healthy number of spinners, but are they going to do enough damage to the horseflies? They're quite tanky little things. The answer to that is not enough. And they continue to sit over it, taking damage. A lot of them now a little low on HP there. Not many spinners left in that force, only a couple. Only the one. Can this make some magic happen? Killed off some power, but the float is too big. The power doesn't really matter that he's killing it off here. Can he kill off the T2 factories? That'll delay Diskraip a little bit. He's killed off a few air factories. That's quite good if he wants to really get back into the air game. Still, the levelers and slammers survive. They're in range of the pelters now, though. Can they continue to take out factories? If they can take out another factory, that'll be good. Factory counts now. Diskraip down a peg, forcing him to float there. That was quite a lot of production that was just taken out. Pushing in on another front again without sufficient anti-air. Does it give Sinoccence the opportunity to really get back into the air game? I don't think it does, because he's only got 9 and he's not going for T2 air. Why not? I don't know. Well, he doesn't really have the eco for it at this particular moment in time. The days where he'd expanded out in his base are long gone. Diskraip gradually just creeping forward with these factories and the pelters and the turrets. It's a nightmare to deal with, and still no shellers. I'd have thought maybe the shellers would pop out by now, but there's still nowhere to be seen. Just a scary amount of air. That's just not nice. That's just not nice. That's not nice. Down go the spinners. Few coming in to support. There goes his air again. Sinoccence down a peg once more. Look at the army counts. 140 to 280. There we go. That's not GG. I don't know what is. Diskraip now up to more than double the income of Sinoccence. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh no. Gradual turret expansion, and there's the GG. Yeah, I'd sort of gone quiet to conserve my voice. It's hurting a little bit, but there wasn't a lot that Sinoccence could have really done for probably the last 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes, I'd almost say. That was a gradual decline, I'd say. But a very gallant attempt from Sinoccence, and very nicely played from Diskraip. The creeping death, as it were, was absolutely nasty. GG's.